Which one? Yes, yes.
You're gonna become a shark, I think. Well, good. You're gonna use some powder.
Yes, Senator Elliott said to
Really? That wasn't the thing.
yeah, and I think they're all really good. And you guys can distill, or I can just
Yeah,
distill.
that's not, that's interesting. That makes
Good afternoon, everybody. It's about 1:13 or so. We're running a few minutes behind due to a long caucus meeting, but I wanted to welcome you all to the County Municipal Government Committee meeting. Madam Clerk, if you could call the roll.
Senator Albritton.
Here.
Senator Cornley. Senator Coleman. Senator Gudger. Senator Hatcher. Senator Hovey. Senator Kelly. Senator Coleman Madison.
Here.
Senator Chambliss. Senator Elliott.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I appreciate that. We've got a few members that are participating in a issue down in the House, and they'll be joining us here shortly. But until then, we do have Representative Woods here with HB 114. Representative, welcome to the committee. If you come up and explain your bill.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for making time for me to come today to explain to you House Bill 114. House Bill 114 deals with unclaimed fiduciary funds that are being currently held by our counties. What this bill does is amends a current section of Code 19-3-87 to allow for the disposition of those funds after a minimum period of 15 years. It also creates a public notice requirement after funds have been transferred from a fiduciary account into the county treasury at the 10-year mark to try to reach anyone who might possibly have not been reached by the probate judge's initial efforts to reach any potential heir or claimant. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Senator Coleman.
Thank you. Good to meet you, Representative Wood. But I do have some questions. Page 1, Section B, the entire section. I want to know how it's going to impact. So I oftentimes serve as a guardian ad litem on motor vehicle accidents. And in those particular situations, most of the time my recommendation, especially if it's a significant amount of money, is going to go into the county in an interest-bearing account to be held by the county clerk until the age of majority. I want to know how that's going to impact my kids, especially when I just had a case last week and my kids were 5 and 7 years old.
Right. Well,
So, but let me finish. Let me finish that portion of the question. So, say that your kid reaches the age of majority, or even prior to, and becomes incapacitated, can't get the money for some form of whatever the case may be. I want to make sure that my kid is protected or my kids are protected to where that money then does not, forfeit after 10 years for whatever it may be under this particular bill.
Right, and that's a great question, great scenario to have to consider, and it's one that I spoke with my probate judge who actually brought me the idea for this bill, and I didn't ask him that exact scenario, but there are other scenarios where you could have a minor that has a guardian ad litem or a conservator, and his response to me was that he would work with that guardian ad litem or conservator or whoever was assigned to that person to hold those funds in the fiduciary account until they either reach the age of, 19 is what he used. I'm not sure the term that you
Okay, so that was your probate judge.
correct. It's still at the discretion. We're not going to change anything that the probate judge would ever do on the front end. If you look at line number 22 on the first page, the word may right there, and the same remains unclaimed, may make an order directing the same be paid into the treasury or the county treasury. So currently, under the code, the probate court can transfer those funds to the county treasury after 5 years. They have to hold them 5 years in fiduciary account. But that is still up to the discretion of the probate judge. They can hold them forever for whatever scenario they feel is in the best interest of the person or the estate. So that wouldn't affect yours. We don't have to this wouldn't have to happen in 15 years. It's still up to the discretion of the probate court.
And I don't know what that amendment looks like. Of course, it'll be at the pleasure of the committee to get this bill out today or not, Mr. Chairman. But I would feel better if there was some type of amendment on this bill to make sure my kids are protected. And again, I don't know what that looks like today, but if it comes out today, I will have a further conversation with you to make sure that that happens. The second portion of it is the notice. Mm-hmm. So notice, starting on line 51 in section 2, going on to page 3, says that notice shall be published on the Alabama Press Association's website or website used by the county for a minimum of 90 days before the date of forfeiture, in addition, in a newspaper or general circulation in the county if one exists. And we do know there are a lot of places that there are no newspapers anymore, at least once a week for 4 consecutive weeks before the date of the forfeiture. I think you could tighten that up and make that stronger if you also had in there a certified letter 1 or 2 times to the last known address of the possible recipient. We got to be able to cover ourselves here in this body and not go back home and someone think that we didn't give people the opportunity to get that money prior to the forfeiture.
Well, I agree 100%. And that's not the intent of the bill. I assure you that, to take anyone's rightful claim to anything. And I talked to a couple of probate judges in the association and the County Commissioner Association about the reporting notice to make sure everybody was copacetic with it. And the idea of sending a certified letter to an address, because on the front end of this, the probate court, the judge, they're going to reach out to anybody they know. We're not addressing scenarios where there is someone that is known. We're addressing a scenario where there is no heir, where there is no one that could be reached for whatever reason. Either they didn't exist or they're just unreachable, period. And the feedback I received was that if we send a certified letter to someone that is known, a known address, what's the odds in minimum of 15 years that there's going to reply back or there's going to be reachable? That was the.
But you cover yourself by sending that certified letter. You've made the attempt. When you say just on the website of the Alabama Press Association website, we have issues already in the state of Alabama. That's why we're taking up the whole issue of broadband. I've just mentioned already that there are places where there are no newspapers. So I just think as a body, we cover ourselves by still sending a certified letter to that last known address. Again, don't have an amendment prepared, don't know the pleasure of the committee, but I think it would really tighten your piece of legislation up if we make the 2 changes or additions that I've suggested.
Representative Woods, do you have a Senate sponsor for this bill yet?
Yes, sir, Senator Bell.
Okay. There's a Senate bill as well?
No,
Senator Bell. Senator Bell. I understand. Okay, gotcha. Well, I would encourage some cooperation. She sounds kind of like a subject matter expert to me. It might be a good idea. And so I think that's a good idea moving forward. Senator Albritton, you had some
Thank you,
questions.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Woods, right now, what happens to the money that has remained in the probate office or whatever after the time frame? What happens to it?
It's currently held in perpetuity. The money, after it leaves a fiduciary account, which is what is addressed under Section 19 that we're actually amending, those funds then transfer to the county treasury after a minimum of 5 years. The county is allowed to draw interest on those funds, which this bill would continue to allow that to happen, and then they're held forever. And the real reason here, when you look at the money, are we being good stewards with the money? Because it becomes worthless over time due to inflation, and we're just holding it forever for somebody that's never going to claim it.
I thought that there was and it is cheated to the state at a particular point.
That is unclaimed funds that are held under Section 35, all these other things that end up with the state treasurer that end up in the general fund, held under a totally separate section of code. Currently, the funds that we're talking about never leave the county. And of course, with this bill, they wouldn't leave the county either.
But they would become usable.
That's correct. We would end up putting them to work with the county road and bridge funds.
Would you have too much of an objection if you shared some of that?
Well, there's been a few folks that have asked that. It's $14.8 million fiscal note is what the Department of Public Examiners came out with. Of course, some counties are more than others. You can imagine the population. The reason I push towards road and bridge funds is because that is a tangible benefit to everybody that everyone eventually across the state is going to use. Whereas if we broke it out to other things that might be for technology or you name it, those are short-term things that might not benefit everybody. Road and bridges is something we're all going to travel down eventually.
Does this bill isolate it to simply roads and bridges?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so roads and bridges within the county that takes control.
That's right. It stays within your county.
I'll be looking at this when we get it. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. General Fund Chairman. Are there any further questions? Okay, I'll entertain a motion for favorable report. I have it from Senator Gudger. I have a second from Senator Carnley. Clerk, if you can call the long roll, please.
Senator Albritton. Senator Carnley. Senator Coleman. Senator Gudger. Senator Hatcher. Senator Hovey. Senator Kelly. Senator Coleman Madison.
Aye. We'll work on the amendment to get it, just to be sure.
Senator Chambliss. Senator Elliott. 6 with 1 nay.
Bill receives favorable report. Thank you, Representative Woods.
Thank you.
We'll be seeing more of you. Okay, very good. Next up, we have Senate Bill 169 by Senator Allen. Senator Allen, welcome to committee. If you would explain your bill.
Thank
and then
you.
We'll get into a public hearing
Just,
where everybody will tell us how great your bill is.
Absolutely. Thank
Yes,
you,
sir.
Mr. Chairman. If you would, turn to page 1 on the bill and look at line 8. And I think it brings some clarity to exactly what we're trying to do today. This bill will allow any business paying a business license based on gross receipts to deduct from gross receipts and any excise tax imposed by the federal, state, and local government. So this is a nutshell of what this bill is all about. For instance, like if you're a convenience store operator and you pump X number of gallons of diesel and gasoline, and of course you have to pay for that, and of course the markup on that for many retail people are very, very little as far as what they make. And so, Mr. Chairman, I would love to entertain this time for the public hearing.
Thank you, sir. We're going to start that public hearing right now, and we may call you back up, Senator Allen, so don't run off if you don't mind. We're going to start with the proponents of the bill. We have Mr. Dean Moody here as a proponent. If you could come to the mic, just kind of state your name, tell us who you're with, and tell us why you like this.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dean Moody, I'm a Montgomery attorney. I represent the gasoline and convenience store industry in the state, specifically as general counsel to the Petroleum and Convenience Marketers of Alabama. I've been their general counsel for the last 35 years. We just believe that it's fundamentally nonsensical as a foundational point to have a business license that's based on gross receipts to include in that calculation the taxes, the excise taxes, as a part of that. It's particularly onus in the gasoline world. To use Montgomery as an example, a gallon of gas in Montgomery has 58 cents a gallon of federal, state, and local taxes in it. And I don't care how you label it, how you characterize it, it is fundamentally a tax on a tax. And we believe it just makes common sense to allow that those excise taxes be backed out of a gross receipts-based business license calculation.
Thank you, sir. Does anybody have any questions or need any further explanation of what the bill does from Mr.
I have a
Craig?
question.
Yes, ma'am. Senator Coleman Madison.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so this is a particular industry where you have the convenience stores and places like that. How would this impact a pharmacy that dispenses drugs, but that is a part that goes to the manufacturer of the drug, but and some of these drugs are very high, but they don't really get paid on that, but being taxed on the gross. So how does this tie into this and maybe other similar industries or businesses?
Yes, ma'am. The premise is the same. I don't know what all the taxes are candidly on a drug, but the premise of the bill and what we're trying to do is the same for a convenience store marketer as it is for a pharmacy.
So are we including all of the other businesses? And I was wondering, I don't know if I haven't been from
No, ma'am,
finance yet.
I'm sorry.
I'm just wondering.
It's not a industry-specific bill. We're talking about excise taxes. It does affect, and I'm here on behalf of the gasoline and convenience store world, but any gross receipts-based calculation of a business license that includes whatever that industry is, other types of excise taxes, it would affect that as well.
I understand what you're saying. I'm just wondering, and I guess we need somebody from our finance department to tell us how this is going to impact, what is going to be the ripple of impact if we are looking at other similar businesses, even though you are particularly talking about one industry here.
Yes, ma'am.
Senator, if I may, I'm going to wade into somewhere I probably ought to stay out of, but I'll tell you this. I don't think we're going to be able to come up with an answer to your question, having worked on similar pieces of legislation that deal with what 464 different municipalities are doing around the state, and then what different taxes may be levied by not just local, but state and federal, and trying to get our head around all of those, and then what the impact would be from a business license standpoint. And each one of those, that becomes kind of supercomputer calculations that I just don't know we're going to get an answer to your question. The fiscal note is undetermined, and I'm afraid we're not going to get a whole lot better than that. Now, I'm going to have Baker Allen come up from the league, and he may or may not have a better answer to your question, but that may just be one of those things we're not going to be able to get a good number on it. Thank you, Mr. Moody. I appreciate it. If you'll stick around, we may have another question for you. So, excuse me, Senator Kelly.
Yes. So hypothetically, following the senator's questions about the pharmaceuticals, say, for example, hospitality, where there's multiple taxes there as well from different agencies, the same principle would apply to that. The gross receipts would be based on the product, not those taxes on top of taxes. Is that a correct statement?
Yes, sir, that's true. And again, the foundational point is it doesn't make sense. We're a collection agent for those taxes. That's a pure pass through. That's not revenue. It's revenue in the sense of money coming in, but those monies go right back out to wherever the taxing authority is. So I can't get away from it. It just doesn't make common sense to add that calculation on those taxes.
Yes, sir. Thank you. That's all I had.
So Mr. Moody, that's an interesting way to put that. So you would say that in that instance, the vendor, the small business, is essentially paying a fee or a tax on something it is collecting for the government.
That's exactly what's happening.
Okay. Thank you, and I appreciate that very much. Yes. Baker, you're up.
Good afternoon. My name is Baker Allen. I'm the Director of Policy and Research. You'll see we provided one paper on this subject. You'll find it. I'll have a copy of it in front of you. I'll start. First of all, we are opposed to Senate Bill 169. Start with a highlight of the business license, because there's been a lot of discussion around this. Municipalities charge a business license to provide essential services. Fire, police, transportation, other quality of life are paid through the revenues of business licenses. Prior to 2006, do a little history, the model for business licenses was a flat fee. You did $100,000 in business, you said this paid the same fee as a business doing $1 million. So back in 2006, the legislature worked with the league and the business community to adjust what we based business licenses on as a model. And that model was on gross receipts. It was simple to calculate, it's based on the amount of volume, and that volume determines what category of fee you pay. The higher you go up, the more you fall into those higher or different categories to pay the fee on your business license. Created a simplified process by only looking at those general gross receipts. Senate Bill 169, which I think is pretty clear, removes excise taxes. All and any excise tax collected that is calculated towards that gross receipts. Our two major points you'll see at the bottom of concern with this bill, and one of those was touched on a little earlier, is that we don't have a clear idea of what that cost would be. It's already been noted by several of the members here that there are a lot of different excise taxes on there. This could have a substantial impact on municipalities. So if we assume there's no change in revenue, that's a direct cut to police, fire, general services provided by those municipalities, and that going forward. The second is it undermines that simplistic system, that agreement back in 2006, that gross receipts was an easy way to look at the economic activity a business conducted. More economic activity, the more demand you have for police, fire, different services. So that reduction kind of skews that number. It doesn't give you the full picture of the underlying economic activity going on. I have any questions, Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Any questions for Baker? Senator Kelly.
Yes, sir. So give me your definition, as in the previous act you're referring to, in gross receipts.
Gross receipts is the total amount of sales, not including the taxes passed on to the consumers. That doesn't include your sales tax. Right, so when we say excise tax, there's a $1 excise tax on playing cards. That tax is actually paid by the business, not by the consumer. Now, often it's passed off onto the consumer. So that's how we'd look at what counts towards those gross receipts.
Okay, I understand in theory what you're referring to, sir. And I would submit and ask for your comments on this statement that small businesses are in business to make money. So regardless of the taxes that are on there, they've got a product that they mark up a certain percentage to make them profitable. So therefore, the intent would appear to me that would be a tax on that particular part of the product. So if there's taxes included on top of that on property, on top of that, that more taxes are being charged on top of those taxes. Again, that's not anything that retailer or that business is retaining. That's almost an artificial profit margin that the business is being penalized for. And your comments to the statement is that, where am I incorrect?
Senator, I understand that concern. I think we tried to explain a little bit on that point 4 on our white paper, but it essentially, that gross receipts is not a tax on the gross receipts. It's not every dollar you add to the gross receipts, you pay 0.3% on it. There are different categories. So if you hit the $100,000 mark, this is how much you owe for your business license. 200,000, it's this. As you progress and hit different levels, that determines the fee of the business license. So it's not a straight tax on the gross receipts. That gross receipt is used as a proxy for activity to determine the appropriate fee. And that sounds a little convoluted, but
I kind of understand, been kind of in the retail world for a considerable amount of time. And going back to the gasoline tax as an example, for example, where I think it was mentioned 50 some odd cents, an example that was being mentioned. So that 58 cents or whatever that figure was, 52 or whatever that figure was. So essentially in the gross receipts, that convenience store, that gasoline company, whatever it was, is paying business license fees on that 50 whatever cents is per gallon. That is tax money that they are receiving, that the business is not retaining. Is that a correct statement?
it goes towards the calculation of what the business license would be. So that 58 cents isn't charged at
So they're still paying it bottom line.
potentially. Yeah, it goes into that calculation. It's
Okay.
factored overall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Hatcher, did you have a motion? Yeah, I think you did.
For that, Baker, let me ask a quick question. So prior to 2006, what was it? It was still a flat rate?
It was a flat, most municipalities used a flat rate system. So whether you're doing 100,000 in gross receipts or 3 million, those companies are paying the exact same amount of money for a business license.
So this fluctuation occurred after 2006.
That is correct.
And the fluctuation, what has been the downfall of that? Just from,
What changed
Yeah.
to the current model?
yeah.
The business community and the league will work together to say that it might not be fair for business only doing $100,000 to pay the same amount as $1 million. So the goal of that business license is to capture what is the cost that are associated with doing business in a community. And there are, I mean, police, fire, safety, things that go into making the community function. So one of the ways we can look at that is how much economic activity do you generate in the community? And that's where gross receipts came from. It came from a proxy from developing what the economic activity is in that community and then tying the fee to that economic activity.
So, Mr. Chairman, I think one of my concerns would be, and I probably would work with any of our members on the committee around an amendment. If this is passed, when would this be effective? Because my concern is for cities that already have budgets in place, right? And we all know that there is no removal of taxes that does not impact people's revenue. So I'm just, that's one of my concerns. And I do know that here in Montgomery, one of my biggest concerns was even at the beginning of the last session where we were just knocked out of the race for occupational taxes. And we don't get to, from this body, from my understanding, dictate how cities raise their revenue.
Well, Senator Hatcher, I think that as a former local government guy too, I would be supportive of that amendment just to give municipalities plenty of time to adjust to this change should we make it. So I think that's pretty reasonable. I encourage the sponsor to work on that. So Senator Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really wish when I'm looking at the fiscal note, because the fiscal note just says that it would reduce by an undetermined amount to the cities and the municipalities. I'm gonna tell you, on any piece of legislation, I'm always gonna be on the side of justice. When I feel like there's injustice, I'm gonna fight against that. And the way that we currently calculate this business license fee, in my opinion, is unjust. But I also want to be sensitive to what the gentleman just asked from Montgomery for those areas. How much is this going to cost them? And just like we got an exact number from the gasoline and convenience store representative, Mr. Moody, about the approximation, I wish we had a number that we could put to that. Because again, too, I also don't want to go home to the 21 different cities that I represent and say that I was responsible for, not having the amount of police and fire protection that they need. But again, the way that we currently do it, in my opinion, appears to be unjust. I just wish I had a figure so I could truly make an educated or the most educated, informed decision on how I'm going to vote on this piece of legislation. So can anybody give us anything close to what that might cost a city?
Let me grab Senator Coleman Madison real quick.
And I want to follow up, and I asked that same question to the sponsor prior to, but I want to know, is there no way that you all can go back, even in previous years, you can go back, whatever, 3 years, whatever. We just got to have a number, because most of us came out of local government. We support local governments, and we want you all to remain whole and be able to do what you do to support the citizens and everything. But there is an imbalance there. I would not expect for me to be taxed on something that I didn't benefit from And in this case, it's kind of a pass-through tax. It goes to the cities and counties and states or whatever. But that owner, and we want to keep and maintain, and this is a small business. They serve a vital role in our communities. But the way it is, this is their livelihood. They have families to take care of. And so we are being unfairly penalizing them for monies that they did not bring home to support their family. So it would help. And these are the same people that your cities, our cities represent. These are constituents. They're out there recruiting businesses. So it's got to be a middle ground here that we can come together somewhere on this without trying to hurt each other. I don't think the intent is that, but that's going to be the impact.
Thank you, Senator Coleman Madison. Senator Kelly.
Just a comment. The biggest concern here, I think, is the effective date on this with me. The concept I'm definitely down for, at least at this point, barring further information, but in 3 months, it doesn't give the local municipalities time to adapt their budgets and that sort of thing. Is the only.
Senator Allen, you hearing that about effective date? Okay, very good. Senator Kelly is moving for a favorable report. Do I have a second? Second by Senator Hatcher. Clerk, call the long roll, please.
Senator Albritton, Senator Carnley, Senator Coleman, Senator Gudger, Senator Hatcher, Senator Hovey. You good? Okay. Senator Hovey, Senator Kelly, Senator Coleman Madison.
If we could extend that date of which to give the cities time to adjust.
Senator Chambliss, Senator Elliott.
Aye. Very good. Bill receives a favorable report. Hey, real quick before we leave, everybody look at your new binder. The clerk's done a great job on this. Very nice. So you're going to have your bill, you're going to have your fiscal note, you're going to have any supporting documentation. So she's doing a great job.
Don't have to fumble around.
See? So anyway, thank you all very much. We appreciate it. We're adjourned.